Hare Krishna. Just before 6 every morning, I would walk up the stairs to Prabhupada's room to accompany him on his morning walk. But when another devotee and I went on the day after Rama ISKCON, we were surprised to find the doors, both to his quarters on one side and to his staff's quarters on the other, locked. I wasn't sure what to do, but I gently knocked on both doors. After a minute or two, Prabhupada's secretary, Hare, opened the assistant's door just a little and said that Prabhupada had stayed up all night and completed his translation of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. At the end, he had written the most beautiful glorification of his Guru Maharaj, and that he was in an ecstatic mood and had said that we should celebrate by having a feast. In his concluding words, Prabhupada had written, today, Sunday, November 10th, 1974, corresponding to the 10th of Kartik, Chaitanya era, 488, the 11th day of the dark fortnight, the Rama ISKCON. We have now finished the English translation of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Sri Caitanya Charitamrita in accordance with the authorized order of His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj, my beloved eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend. So, by 1974, Srila Prabhupada was becoming quite aged, and he had health issues. In 74, I think it must have been in the summer of this same year, 74, Prabhupada was very sick. So the word went to all the temples. This is around maybe July 74. And we all did 24-hour kirtans for Srila Prabhupada's health because he wasn't well. So this is just a little bit after that. Now, we can appreciate how important the Chaitanya Charitamrita is. Srila Prabhupada had been translating Srimad Bhagavatam, and at that time I think he was up to the 5th canto, maybe. But he stopped that work and started the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we can understand how important the Chaitanya Charitamrita is. And one other interesting point here is that he said that according to the order of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he had completed the translation of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Transcendental literature, translating transcendental literature, should be done on the order. The order of Krishna, which transcends from Krishna through the order of the spiritual master. So, on the order of his guru, Srila Prabhupada finished the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So a very momentous occasion. Today is also Rama ISKCON, and Srila Prabhupada mentions that Bhagavad Gita is like the ABCs of spiritual life. It's the beginning. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, whatever's in Bhagavad Gita is in Bhagavatam, but in Bhagavatam it's expanded. There's more information about the same topics that are there in Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada calls it the ABCs of spiritual life, Bhagavad Gita. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the graduate work, right? You can know all the different aspects of Vaishnava philosophy and worshiping Krishna, and even the Sunam Bhonam, the pastimes of Lord Krishna from reading Srimad Bhagavatam. But even higher than that, postgraduate study is Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. So how important it is. Some persons say that Srila Prabhupada couldn't give everything. And he had a short time and they can give you more. But this is all false propaganda. Everything required for spiritual life, Srila Prabhupada gave us. And in particular, when he felt that, his time was coming, he stopped the Bhagavatam. This was earlier on, in 71 or 72, and translated, and gave a summary of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, specifically, so that if anything happened to him, the devotees would have the Sunam Bonam, the pastimes of Krishna. So this is a momentous occasion that Srila Prabhupada, on this particular day, finished his translation of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhupada recounted his first meeting with his Guru Maharaj and receiving his instructions, quote, to preach the cult of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu in English in the Western countries, unquote. At first he had resisted the order, quote, because at that time I was a complete nationalist, a follower of Mahatma Gandhi. I submitted to his divine grace that unless our country were freed from foreign subjugation, no one would hear the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu seriously. But at last I was defeated and was convinced that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's message is the only panacea for suffering humanity. This idea that, India is going to have Swaraj and everything's going to be better. Is it true? Huh? Think it's true? I don't know. I wasn't alive during the, the colonial era of the British. I don't know. But one relative of Srila Prabhupada's nephew, he told me, because he was living during that time, he and his other cousins would go to Allahabad and stay in Prabhupada's house when they were students. They got some bicycles and traveled around Allahabad. They spent time with Prabhupada when he was a householder. So he said, during the time of the British, everything was very good. Now, he said, all are rascals. He said, in those days, you could buy 1 kilo of milk for 2 anna. And there were no cartels, no strikes. It was very good, he said. Everything was systematic. And actually, Calcutta was known as the Garden City of Asia. So many gardens, so many ponds. You can't call it that now. It's kind of like the armpit of Asia or something. So he was saying it was very good. We may have a misconception that if this material thing just happens, then everything will be good. Never works out. Huh? So-called democracy. One person captures the vote, gets the power, and what's his business? Luto, luto, luto. Yes? Whatever party you call it, business is the same. In India, it's more obvious. In America, it's more chup rakha hai. But it's all the same. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada says, it's not democracy, it's demon crazy. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, being the Tattva Darshan, who knows the truth, he guided Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was thinking that we have to have liberation, independence. Real independence means to be dependent on Krishna, to be dependent on Krishna's devotees. This is a real independence. Because that is our swabhavik, that's our natural position. But not knowing this, we chase after so many other isms, communism, ultraism, and waste our time only to become frustrated. Prabhupada calls it panacea. The message of Caitanya Mahaprabhu is a panacea. Panacea means one cure for all diseases. It's a panacea. Everything can come in line by following the instructions of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. This society does not know. Therefore, havoc is there. Havoc. I was also convinced that the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was then in the hands of a very expert devotee, and that surely the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu would spread all over the world. I could not, however, immediately take up this instructions to preach, but I took his words very seriously and was always thinking of how to execute his order, although I was quite unfit to do so. This is another mark of the pure devotee of the Lord. They think they have no qualifications. I'm not qualified. One who's not a pure devotee thinks, yes, I'm very qualified. I'm qualified. Prabhupada got the order, but he's thinking I'm unfit, I'm unqualified. How can I do? When he came into the port in New York, he said, my dear Lord, I don't know. These people are all fixed in the modes of passion and ignorance. Right? But having great faith in the words of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vasudhaiva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha, that simply by performing devotional service to Vasudeva, by hearing the message of Krishna, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, one's heart can become purified. All the abhadra, all the dirty things can go from the heart. So to do this, the pure devotee of the Lord thinks himself unfit. And we can measure our Krishna consciousness by how much we think we're unfit. Right? When in 1950, Prabhupada had retired from family life and then taken sannyas, he had finally been, in his own words, completely ready to discharge the order of my spiritual master. By the mercy of his divine grace, I was able to come to New York on September 17, 1965. Since then, I have translated many books, including Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, teachings of Lord Caitanya, a summary, and many others. In 1972, Srila Prabhupada came to Vrindavan. That time we had no temple, no land, nothing. 1972 Vrindavan. But Srila Prabhupada came to his rooms in Radha Damodar. And at that time he was holding discourses on the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the nectar devotion. And he was, there's a series of recordings that you can hear of Srila Prabhupada preaching to the devotees the nectar devotion. And one devotee would read for some time from nectar devotion, and then Prabhupada would comment. That was in 1972 in the courtyard of Radha Damodar temple. So that we're in this Kartik Mas, also known as Niyam Mas, when you take some extra devotional service. And we can hear those lectures and in that way increase our devotion by listening to the nectar of devotion. In the meantime, I was induced to translate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's favorite book. I think that he has always seen my activities and guided me within my heart by his words. As it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. Spiritual inspiration comes from within the heart, wherein the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his Paramatma feature, is always sitting with all of his devotees and his associates. Krishna is never alone. And Krishna, even as the Paramatma in the heart, is never alone. He's with his devotees, as mentioned here by Srila Prabhupada. It's with his devotees. And for the devotee who is fixed in a particular form of the Lord, that form manifests within his heart. So although the Acharya, and when I say Acharya, I mean the founder Acharya. Acharya can mean teacher by example also. So that way I can be Acharya. I can hear something and do that, and by my example you could see that and do it also. You're also Acharya. But there's another sense of Acharya. One who establishes the path of bhakti for others to actually follow, who empowers by his devotion so many others to take to bhakti. That is Acharya. So the Acharya, he descends from the Uttam Adhikari platform to the Madhyam Adhikari platform, because the Uttam sees that everybody's engaged in devotional service except for himself. But an Acharya has to make a distinction of seeing people and being compassionate on their fallen condition to bring them to the path of bhakti. So when the Acharya is busy lecturing, pushing forward Lord Chaitanya's movement by developing various programs, at the same time, within his heart of hearts, he's serving Radha and Krishna in their pastimes. So this is a very unique position. And when Srila Prabhupada established various deities, like here in Juhu, he established Shri Shri Radha Ras Bihari. It's a manifestation of his heart. So when we worship the deity as established by the Acharya, then it's a great responsibility, because the Lord has come at the request of his pure devotee to accept our service. Therefore, our service has to be very carefully done. Carefully done. We should never think that the deity is stone. Right? If we don't understand that, one time it was said that if Krishna walked in the door right now, you'd have no more realization that this is God than you have realization that the deity is God. You understand? It's not when Krishna was on the planet, everybody knew he was God. Let's describe that the Yadavas considered him the Paramatma. Right? And some considered him to be the greatest fool. When he came into the arena to fight the wrestlers in Kansa's arena, Chanari and Mustika, the wrestlers, in the audience, they saw him in different ways. So rendering service to the form of the Lord and the form of the deity, gradually we will understand this form is not different from Krishna, and actually the deity is ready to talk with us. We have so many examples. Sakshi Gopal deity. Sakshi Gopal, he was in Vrindavan. Right? And there was the Brahmin, old Brahmin and a young Brahmin, they were doing prikrama. So the young Brahmin was taking care of the old Brahmin very nicely. And when they came to the Gopal deity in Vrindavan, the old Brahmin said, you know, you've taken care of me on this prikrama so nicely. You know, prikramas can be troublesome. No place to stay, right? And you have to do madhukari for your food. In those days, there were no dhaba, the Delhi dhaba or the Punjabi dhaba, no dhabas. Right? So this young Brahmin took nice care. So he told in front of the Gopal deity, you can marry my daughter. And he said, no, not like that. I'm a poor Brahmin. How I'll marry your daughter? He said, no. So after the old Brahmin went back to Orissa, where he was from, and after some time, the young Brahmin came, and actually the old Brahmin had exposed to his son and other relatives that he had promised the hand of his daughter to this poor Brahmin. They became very upset. Our daughter is from aristocratic family, and how you can give this the beggar type boy? Don't do like, you can't do, I want. But the Brahmin said, I gave my word. He said, you don't worry. When he comes, you be quiet. Say you forgot. That's all. So the Brahmin came, and the son of the old Brahmin chastised him like he said, hey, who will give their daughter to you? Tum kaun hai? Beggar aadmi? Jao this. So the young Brahmin was quite advanced. He could have left it at that, but he thought, no, for the sake of the old Brahmin who promised in front of the Gopal deity that I should do something to help him. Otherwise, if he breaks his promise in front of the deities, he'll suffer. So he went back to Vrindavan. He prayed in front of the Gopal Didi, said that old Brahman had promised, and now he's not able to keep his promise. Right? They're saying if you come, then they'll keep his promise. And the Didi said to the young Brahmin, no, how can I go all the way to Orissa? I'm standing here, I'm not moving. How can I do that? And the young Brahmin replied, my dear Lord, you can do anything. You're talking to me, you can certainly walk all the way to Vrindavan. So then the Didi said, okay. He saw the strong faith. He said, you go, you'll hear me behind. You'll hear my nupur. Nupur means ankle bells. Caitanya Mahaprabhu also wore ankle bells. So, and then when they don't look around, don't look back, but you'll know I'm there because you'll hear my ankle bells. So they started. And the Brahmin, when he got close to the village of the old Brahmin, he could no longer hear the ankle bells, and he turned around, and there he saw the Gopal Didi had stopped in that spot. Right, a big Didi of Krishna. So then he called all the villagers, and they came and they saw that this big deity of Krishna, stone deity, had come all the way from Vrindavan. It wouldn't be possible for this Brahmin to bring such a big deity. So they could understand the deity had come on its own. So Srila Prabhupada says the deity is ready to talk with us. The deity is ready to interact with us. But we should have a purification of the heart. Don't think the deity is a stone. If you think the deity is stone, then the whole idea of deity worship will become a big burden. It'll become burden. Right? And you will think, after I leave, Prabhupada said, that this old man left this world and left this burden. Instead of the deity being vigraha, you'll think this is galagraha. Galagraha means burden. So, we always have to be very careful in worshipping Shri Shri Radha Ras Bihari. It is my wish that devotees of Lord Chaitanya all over the world enjoy this translation. And I'm glad to express my gratitude to the learned men in the Western countries who are so pleased with my work that they are ordering in advance all my books that will be published in the future. On this occasion, therefore, I request my disciples who are determined to help me in this work to continue their cooperation fully so that philosophers, scholars, religionists, and people in general all over the world will benefit by reading our transcendental literatures. At that time, there was a party of devotees called the Bbt Library Party in America. And they were traveling from college to college, university to university, and they were selling sets of Srila Prabhupada's books in the libraries. So they would sell the Chaitanya Charitamrita, they would sell whatever Bhagavatams were there in what they called a standing order. So as and when the books were published, they would deliver to the college, university libraries. And that party was very successful. It was headed up by His Holiness Satsvarup Maharaj. And many stalwart devotees were in there, in that party, like Ganesham Das. You know who Ganesham Das is? You see, he knows. I can remember these devotees would come to the St. Louis temple because in St. Louis there are several big universities. Washington University, St. Louis University. And these devotees, even then, they were all very austere. They got up very early in the morning, chanting their rounds. They didn't eat very much. They didn't sleep very much. And they were out, selling sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, standing orders. And Srila Prabhupada was very, very pleased by their activities. And most all those devotees are still practicing Krishna consciousness. They were benedicted with the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada was like a grandfather to the children of Juhu. Okay, that's the next section, so we'll leave that for next time. And we'll just read the concluding words that were written on this day back in 1974, concluding the translation of the Caitanya Charitamrita. Some of it was mentioned, but there's a lot more nectar here. So this happened right here in Juhu. Prabhupada wrote these words. Concluding words. This is at the end of the Caitanya Charitamrita. Today, Sunday, November 10th, 1974, corresponding to the 10th of Kartik, Caitanya era 488, the 11th day of the dark fortnight, the Rama Ekadasi, we have now finished the English translation of Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's Sri Caitanya Charitamrita in accordance with the authorized order of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj. My beloved eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend. Although according to material vision, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, passed away from this world on the last day of December 1936, I still consider His Divine Grace to be always present with me by His Vani, His words. There are two ways of association, by Vani and by Vapu. Vani means words and Vapu means physical presence. Physical presence is sometimes appreciated and sometimes not. But Vani continues to exist eternally. Therefore, we must take advantage of the Vani, not the physical presence. The Bhagavad Gita, for example, is the Vani of Lord Krishna. Although Krishna was personally present 5,000 years ago and is no longer physically present from the materialistic point of view, the Bhagavad Gita continues. In this connection, we may call to memory the time when I was fortunate enough to meet His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, sometime in the year 1922. Srila Prabhupada had come to Calcutta from Sridham Mayapur to start the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Mutt. He was sitting in a house at Ultadanga when, through the inducement of an intimate friend, the late Sriman Narendranath Mullik, I had the opportunity to meet His Divine Grace for the first time. I do not remember the actual date of the meeting, but at that time, I was one of the managers of Dr. Bosch's laboratory in Calcutta. I was a newly married young man, addicted to Gandhi's movement and dressed in khadi. Fortunately, even at our first meeting, His Divine Grace advised me to preach the cult of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu in English to the Western countries, because at that time I was a complete nationalist, a follower of Mahatma Gandhi. I submitted to His Divine Grace that unless our country were freed from foreign subjugation, no one would hear the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu seriously. Of course, we had some argument on the subject, but at last I was defeated and convinced that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's message was the only panacea for suffering humanity. I was also convinced the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was then in the hands of a very expert devotee, and that surely the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu would spread all over the world. I could not, however, immediately take up the instructions to preach, but I took his words very seriously and was always thinking of how to execute his order, although I was quite unfit to do so. In this way, I passed my life as a householder until 1950. when I retired from family life as a vanprastha. With no companion, I loitered here and there until 1958, when I took sannyas. Then I was completely ready to discharge the order of my spiritual master. Previously, in 1936, just before His Divine Grace passed away at Jagannath Puri, I wrote him a letter asking what I could do to serve him. In reply, he wrote a letter dated 13th December 1936, asking me in the same way to preach in English the cult of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu as I had heard it from him. After he passed away, I started the fortnightly magazine Back to Godhead, some in 1944, and tried to spread the cult of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu through the magazine. After I took sannyas, a well-wishing friend suggested that I write books instead of magazines. Magazines, he said, might be thrown away, but books remain perpetually. Then I attempted to write Srimad Bhagavatam. Before that, I was a householder. I had written on Srimad Bhagavad Gita and had completed about 1,100 pages. But somehow or other, the manuscript was stolen. In any case, when I had published Srimad Bhagavatam first canto in 3 volumes in India, I thought of going to the USA. By the mercy of His Divine Grace, I was able to come to New York on September 17, 1965. Since then, I have translated many books, including Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and many others. In the meantime, I was induced to translate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and publish it in an elaborate version. In his leisure time, in his later life, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, would simply read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was his favorite book. He used to say that there would be a time when foreigners would learn the Bengali language to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The work of this translation began about 15 months ago. Now, by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it is finished. In this connection, I have to thank my American disciples, especially Shriman Prajumnya Das Adhikari, Shriman Nitai Das Adhikari, Shriman Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari, and many other boys and girls who are sincerely helping me in writing, editing, and publishing all these literatures. I think that His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is always seeing my activities and guiding me within my heart by His words. As it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye. Spiritual inspiration comes from within the heart, wherein the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in His Paramatma feature, is always sitting with all His devotees and associates. It is to be admitted that whatever translation work I have done is through the inspiration of my spiritual master, because personally I am most insignificant and incompetent to do this materially impossible work. I do not think myself a very learned scholar, but I have full faith in the service of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If there's any credit to my activities of translating, it is all due to His Divine Grace. Certainly, if His Divine Grace were physically present at this time, it would have been a great occasion for jubilation. But even though He is not physically present, I am confident that He's very much pleased by this work of translation. He was very fond of seeing many books published to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Therefore, our society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, has been formed to execute this order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It is my wish that the devotees of Lord Chaitanya all over the world enjoy this translation. And I'm glad to express my gratitude to the learned men in the Western countries who are so pleased with my work that they are ordering in advance all books and will be published in the future. On this occasion, therefore, I request my disciples who are determined to help me in this work to continue their cooperation fully so that philosophers, scholars, religionists, and people in general all over the world will benefit by reading our transcendental literatures such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, dated November 10th, 1974, at the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Hare Krishna Land, Juhu, Bombay. Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. One interesting thing to note here, Prabhupada's quarters in the back. Then 74, this was not here. Nothing was here. There were rooms at the back. So the room where he was staying, he says here, it was finished 1974 at the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Hare Krishna Land, Juhu, Bombay. So that room was also the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Hare Krishna. Bbt, yeah. Any questions? Comments? Reflections, realizations? Yes. Mike?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have one question. As Prabhupada wrote that Krishna is not alone as Paramatma, all his associates are also there in the heart. So that point I could not understand.
What you don't understand?
That Krishna is there. We read in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna, super soul is there and soul is there.
Yeah.
But this is something I heard first time. His associates are also there.
Yes. Krishna, Prabhupada just said it. We read it from Srila Prabhupada. The Lord is there in his heart, in your heart, with all of his associates. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is there. And of course the Vishnu form is also there. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, all the acharyas are there with him. And Srila Prabhupada. They're all there. So when you're praying to Krishna, you're praying to so many of his devotees also. Mike.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for a wonderful narration of Chaitanya Charitamrita's translation and Prabhupada's realizations. And however, I have a comment. Srila Prabhupada is saying this is a great occasion of jubilation.
Yes.
Certainly for his Guru Maharaj and for himself. And once I heard...
And for all the devotees.
Yes. Once
I can remember when the first book came to the temple. It was called Caitanya and 5 Features. It was just one chapter of the Caitanya Charitamrita, chapter 7, Adi Lila, about the Panchatattva. All the devotees got that book and they, there were just a few copies.
So, even Giriraj Maharaj also once said, there should be feast and festival today. So, it is an occasion of great joy and jubilation. We should have a feast and festival today on the occasion of Rama Ekadashi's Prabhupada's completion of Chaitanya Charitamrita purports. Certainly, for all over world, Rama Ekadashi is very specific and special for ISKCON devotees. For Hare Krishna Land Juhu devotees, it is their great fortune that Prabhupada completed here.
Right here.
We should have a festival today. Hare Krishna.
Nrsingananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, wonderful comments you made reading today. Thank you so much. So deep. I think my favorite title in the compendium of Prabhupada's books is Who is Pagala? Who's crazy? And all these isms you had mentioned earlier that we attach ourselves to, they still manifest amongst us. It's not like we are completely detached from all of our nationalism You take, for example, in Russia today, there's Russian devotees who are very convinced that the war in Ukraine is justifiable, and they will argue for the principle of that war. And then you have devotees in Ukraine who are just the opposite, because they are Ukrainians and they're arguing the principle of their sovereignty. And you have Americans and Europeans who are justifying their criticisms of how the civilians are being completely decimated and victimized by the Russians. But at the same time, we quickly forget how the Americans had done the same thing to the Iraqis just 20, 30 years ago, to the Iraqi civilians, and there wasn't anywhere near that kind of cacophony of resistance. So all of these isms that Prabhupada explained to us that have nothing to do with us, the soul, that's one of the great attractions to the Krishna conscious philosophy, that we can transcend all of these ideas and rest on the principle of true peace formula by understanding each other as spirit soul. And to us, in the time of the Vietnam War, that rang so loudly that it convinced many of the American disciples that Prabhupada had it right. Nobody else was telling us that essential truth. And we should never forget it, because we can become quickly an Indian yatra and an American yatra, North American yatra and a Russian yatra, and it's all this part of the same Maya. And I just wanted to share that that's what I got from hearing from you today. Thank you very much.
Nice realization. No isms, even down to baseballism and cricketism.
Hare Krishna. Hridayananda Maharaj, he was commenting that one of his professors told him that even for the most accomplished writer, to produce a book, one book, it takes 2-3 years at least. But your spiritual master, he must be a divine personality. That how he is producing so many books. So it is amazing that how can
the books were translated, but they weren't coming out so quickly. And,
publishers were behind.
Huh?
Bbt publishers were behind.
Way behind, not behind, way behind. So on Venice Beach, famous story, Srila Prabhupada's walking, and he's saying that he wants the books to come out. And Prabhupada said, do something. So he thought, Prabhupada, we can produce one book every 3 months. And Prabhupada said, well, it's too slow. So Rameshwar dropped back from the morning walk on Venice Beach, and he started talking with some of the Bbt devotees, how can they do, right? And they went back and, they gave another projection, and Prabhupada said, you must finish all the books in how much time?
2 months.
2 months. And Rameshwar blurted out, but Prabhupada, that's impossible. And Prabhupada said, impossible is the word in a fool's dictionary.
And they did it.
And they did it. Night and day, sleeping at the computer and the easel where they're painting. One devotee would paint for some time, then another devotee would come and paint for some time. Devotees typesetting, Bengali, checking the Bengali. And they finished all the books published in 2 months' time. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So it just goes to show you that if you have the right motive to do something, impossible things can be done, but the motive has to be pure. The motive of the devotees was simply to please Srila Prabhupada. It was his order, and he wanted to do it for the pleasure of Prabhupada. If you have any other motive, it becomes an impossible task. But the impossible thing becomes very easy when you're doing it on the order. Just like Srila Prabhupada said, this Caitanya Charitamrita was the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Preach to the West. It's not easy. Meat eaters, malechas, yavanas, get them to chant, put on tilak. How is it possible? But the desire was pure. And when the desire is pure, then Krishna, from within the heart, enlightens people. I didn't know anything about Krishna. When I saw the devotees chanting, something awakened within me. You know, that might be nice to do, go out and chant like that. And not soon after that, I found myself in the temple in downtown St. Louis chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. And sometimes I still wonder how I got here. But it's Paramatma. He's in the heart. And he enlightens us. Why? By that sincere desire of his pure devotee. He enlightens us. Hare Krishna. Yes, Hanuman? Mike?
Srila Prabhupada said,
Hanuman first. Senior devotee.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, once Rameshwar Prabhu told that this Prabhupada purchased his land for 14 lakhs rupees. And Prabhupada was having only 2 lakhs.
You know where he got the money?
And
You know where he got the money?
You tell, no?
I'll tell. Gopi Chanavallabha Prabhu was the New York Temple president.
Yeah.
That time they were in Brooklyn on, what street was it? Henry Street, right. Now he had been saving up money to buy a building in Manhattan. So Prabhupada knew that. So he told, you know, we think sometimes our project, my project, you know, I'm doing this project, you know, I'm going to buy this or do it. But Prabhupada told him, you give me that money, send it.
Yeah.
I want to buy Hare Krishna. And he did it.
Yes.
Whatever money he had collected, he sent it to Prabhupada to buy this, Hare Krishna land.
Yeah.
How much we devotees of Hare Krishna land are indebted to the North Americans.
Yeah.
The North American Bbt built the place.
Yes.
The New York Temple paid the money to buy the land, right? So much indebted.
Okay.
And that Henry Street Temple, I was there at that time.
Yeah.
And that Henry Street Temple needed so much repair. There was disease in the walls. It used to be a hospital. We got staph infection just from the walls.
And it was crowded.
It was tiny, and
There weren't enough bathrooms.
There was just one for all the brahmacharis.
All the brahmacharis. You know how long you could stay in the shower? 5 seconds. You get in the shower. Okay, Prabhu. 5 seconds. Count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get out. It was a tough place.
It was.
There were devotees that sleep on the stairs. It was so crowded.
But the
So
money
the-
went. Money went.
But they needed they needed a place desperately, but Prabhupada said, give me the money. The money was given to Prabhupada in Hare Krishna land. See the cooperation, the dedication. Yes, I'm sorry, Hanuman, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. By the mercy of his Bhaktisiddhanta Swamiji, Srila Prabhupada was able to do lot of service. And by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada disciples build these temples. And why should have they moved? By the mercy of Srila Prabhupada disciples, we are able to do little service for Srila Prabhupada. and Shri Radha Rasbihari were indebted to all of the other devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. Shri Radha Damodar ki. Shri Radha Rasbihari ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande.